What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast with Cass, Chris, and Sean. What's going on, fellas?
Good with y'all boys.
What's good?
We're here on Super Bowl week officially. We're also clearly here on NBA deadline week as well. So we got a lot of NBA trade deadline. Let me correct myself there.
Yeah.
So we got a lot to dig into. Since it's the Super Bowl, we'll leave that for the end, and we'll go ahead and get into the biggest news of the day.
Don't sound so sad. What's going on?
James Harden has, to start just maybe about an hour ago, James Harden has officially been traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Darius Garland and a second-round pick.
Get that.
Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation about a bunch of different trades with mostly focusing on Giannis. We got the news about this yesterday, possibly being in the works, and it accelerated pretty quickly. Obviously, with the trades happening today, there's a couple other trades that has happened today as well that we can get into and over the past couple of days. But obviously, that's the biggest trade news. So, what was you guys' thoughts when you heard the trade?
I don't know. I guess it was more for me. It was a little funny because we saw rumors, speculations yesterday, and I mean for it to actually be real, kind of seems strange. But hey, Cavs feel like they need to go for it. You know what I'm saying? They went and go get a big dog. That Harden, that big dog. Nah, but I mean, only time will tell for real. Honestly, he is an older player in the NBA. You give up one of your young pieces plus a pick, you really feel strongly about it. So I'm interested to see if they make any moves to finish off before the trade deadline. But this is one of those only time will tell. Playoffs around the corner.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about with this trade, which makes it even more interesting that they chose him as the guy to go for. And I know like Darius Garland has had his injury, kind of issues over the past couple of years, and they have popped up at bad times, especially in the playoffs. And then one thing about James Harden is he gonna be there. Now, how will he play? Will he shoot it, Chris? What? That's another story, but he gonna play in the playoffs. So I mean, I guess that's one thing you got going for you. It's a big bet to make at this point. If you're Cleveland and you kind of pushing chips all in, they had the report come out about Donovan Mitchell and how, he might not sign back if they have another disappointing playoff run, and how much did that have, if any, impact on swinging for defenses like this with James Harden. But I mean, like Chris, he's been playing well. Like Chris said, he's been playing well, especially over the past couple of weeks when the Clippers went on a little run. That's why it's so surprising to a lot of people. But it's definitely a choice. It's definitely a choice. But with our resident Cavs fan, let's get the voice of the people.
Floor is yours, man.
Social media, obviously, because that's really where the talk has been so far. Talking about, Darius Garland isn't as good as James Harden, even at 36 or whatever age he is. Which, I think you can kind of go both ways with it in a sense, because Donovan Mitchell, like, I think that Darius Garland is, obviously he's 10 years younger. I think he is a much better defender than people give him credit for. But with that being said, he obviously has size limitations. So, I mean, it kind of is what it is. Like, he competes. He's not a cone, in my opinion. But, he's obviously not the prolific scorer that James Harden is. And then in terms of the playmaking, James Harden has kind of proven himself to be a little bit more, which I do think that Darius Garland is an excellent playmaker as well. I don't know. I don't understand it. Maybe Darius Garland, not something that's, not really mentioned. Maybe his toes, that, a lot of people have kind of criticized him for sitting out playoff games with a toe injury. I feel like that should have kind of been put to bed when he came back in the game last year in the playoffs against the Pacers, and you could clearly see that he could not move. Like, he could barely even walk. And it's obviously, it's February. We're about to go into All-Star break of the next year, and an injury that occurred in April of last year still has him out. So, I don't know if that's maybe why they traded him, because, adding a second round pick kind of indicates that in a sense. But it seems extremely short sighted to me right now. Obviously there's other pieces that could be moved, but in my opinion, unless, and I really don't necessarily like this either, but unless you're trading Mobley for Giannis, and that's what you're trying to say that you want to go for, I personally wouldn't trade a second team All NBA Defensive Player of the Year at 24 years old. But, I guess, it's also kind of weird to say that you wouldn't trade him for Giannis, who is, maybe a top 5 player in the league. I don't really see how what the point of this is, because, if you're saying Darius Garland is not reliable in the playoffs, what is James Harden?
Like I said, he's gonna be there.
He'll be there, and I do think, in a serious note, basketball wise, like I told you guys, he's a great playmaker. He'll be available. He's a great playmaker. He'll definitely make everybody around him better. Especially, I think he really could make the double bigs work. If it's Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, or if it's Giannis and Jared Allen, or Giannis and Evan Mobley, if they somehow can get finessed like they might have just got finessed. But train a 26-year-old in his prime. And on the Clippers side, if Darius Garland isn't cooked and the Cavs just decided to do this, I think it's an excellent trade for the Clippers, because, they were going so old, and now obviously they got younger this year, but John Collins has been playing, pretty well over the past few weeks. Obviously since they've gone on a run. Obviously Kawhi has been all NBA type this year as well. Darius Garland can only add to that when you get a point guard that, once again, actually tries to defend. I'm not sure if that, I don't think that was an issue necessarily for James Harden with LA, but I don't know. It's tough. I mean, there's no Donovan Mitchell in Cleveland if there's no Darius Garland, in my opinion. Darius Garland was kind of the catalyst for kind of everything that happened in Cleveland. Obviously it was accelerated by Evan Mobley getting there, and then the trade for Lauri Markkanen, or the picking up Lauri Markkanen in free agency, and then trading him for Donovan Mitchell the next season. But it all kicked off with Darius Garland and his ascension to becoming an all-star. And it's just tough. It's tough. It's very tough.
Like I said, it's a choice not many would have made, especially for James Harden, the player who we've seen bounce around to a few teams now, and kind of had the same story about him. I don't know. It's hard to sell to the fan base. What I'm interested to see, how it all plays out, especially over these next couple of weeks, right before the All-Star break and right after the All-Star break, because it's a hard sell to the fan base if you sitting there taking a swing on James Harden at this point in his career. That's not very inspiring for a team that has that, that kind of what you just missed out kind of attitude, especially in the East. We just missed out. That could have been our year. This should be our year. And you turn around and get James Harden. Like I said, he's a good player, but
and the thing about it is that that's everybody's hang up. It's like, we all seen what the playoffs look like. We've all given you chances.
Yeah.
Maybe some longer than others. Pause. Maybe some, people kind of gave up on that really quickly when maybe in Houston. I know I recently, last year was kind of like, I think James Harden will kind of have his moments, and he didn't.
You did say that.
So
yeah.
It's funny enough. But I think at some point, whether it's early on or now, there's a lot of people that are just like, bro, it is what it is. We know what it is when it comes to him. And maybe given that Cleveland has had, I guess you're going for the durability aspect because, or maybe, you're like hoping James Harden can, I don't know, instill some toughness. Because I mean, him being there maybe points to his toughness. I don't really know what comes out of this. And then to speak on some other trades, they obviously got Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. I feel like now that kind of
that looks weird. That looks weird now.
Because that looked like a perfect pairing with Darius Garland, especially because now you can kind of, with Dennis Schroeder there, you can kind of allow him to get healthy throughout the season, maybe hold him back until the playoffs so he stays healthy. Now it's like, is Dennis even going to be there? Not to say that because James Harden is on the court so much, because he's so durable. Not to say that, Dennis Schroeder is not a good player, because he is. It just makes it all weird. Then Lonzo's still there, obviously, for now, and they're still trying to work on trading him. But, there's a lot of guards there. Getting rid of DeAndre Hunter as well, that you're losing a bit of size there. It's just it's very interesting. And I gave Kobe Altman, the GM, just last week, all these props just for him to
quit.
Do this today. So I think NBA fans and Cavs fans, and especially, kind of just need to understand, because right now it's just everybody's kind of talking about the James Harden side of it, but I think the Darius Garland side of it is kind of the more important piece of it. But aside of that, we also had Jaren Jackson Jr. Being traded from the Memphis Grizzlies over to the Utah Jazz and kind of putting together a pretty good team, seemingly, for Utah, without them really I know they've acquired so many picks, but excuse me, it's not like they hit on they had the number 1 overall pick or number 2 overall pick. They did end up getting Ace Bailey, a guy that dropped this past draft. But, I mean, to me, their starting lineup looks pretty good. What was you guys' thoughts, on that trade?
For me, I mean, hey, it's Danny Ainge, man. That's what he really do. He's a trade. He trades a lot. He trades picks and players. He likes to hoard picks, so getting picks and whatnot. But I think it's more on Memphis for me. Is like, what is their next move? I guess. Are you gonna go ahead and move on from Ja? You already moved on from Dylan Brooks a couple years ago, whatnot. Then Desmond Bain is out of there, and now Jaren Jackson out of there. It's like, okay, now what? Ja came back, but he's not looking like the Ja that we've seen, in the past 2-3 years. So I'm really interested to see what Memphis looks like, what direction they're really trying to go in. But as far as the Utah Jazz, I like what I see. But that's just Danny Ainge for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the price was a little too steep, giving up 3 future firsts. I guess they had to give away, but I mean, I look at it more from Memphis side, and this gives them, of course, now 13 first-round picks over the next 7 years. You still have Ja Morant on the roster, which you would assume that should be priority number 1, is to find somebody that could take him on and just clean it up. Clean up the whole organization. Not even just basketball, just everything. Everything on and off the court there. I think that's
fighting on the sideline.
Hey man. But yeah, it's not a bad move for Memphis, especially when you can get 3 firsts back for Jaren Jackson Jr., who is, I get it, defensive player of the year, all of that. I get it. But it did seem a little steep from the Jazz side. I mean, we'll see if they can keep dealing, Chris. If Danny Ainge can keep dealing, especially this off season, and build up an actual team. But Memphis is just clear. Time for rebuild.
Yeah, and that's the first thing that comes to mind is like what happens with Ja Morant. More so, obviously, more so than the actual trade itself. And, with Jaren Jackson, we've all kind of had our thoughts on him in terms of his rebounding ability outside of, obviously he's been an elite defender. Kendrick Perkins had a clip today that went viral of him kind of basically being like, basically saying he sucks, in as many words. I don't necessarily agree with that, but, obviously there is, with the changing of the NBA a little bit, there is a little bit of a difference in terms of how power forwards, especially more than centers, because I do feel like we do see a little bit of traditional, in a sense, in terms of size rebounding, we see a lot of your traditional centers, but in terms of power forward, they're all basically stretch bigs at this point, and obviously some rebound better than others, but that's always going to be a knock that goes against Jaren. So bringing him to a team with Walker Kessler, as well as Lauri Markkanen, having that's basically 2 7-footers around him, maybe that helps out a little bit where, it kind of masks that. But yeah, ultimately, like, the Grizzlies are clearly trying to gear up in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they are trying to go for a big swing, and maybe not try to trade Ja, but I just don't see that as likely. So maybe we get another alert here soon that is involving Ja, and he gets traded this season. I don't, maybe not, because obviously he's been in and out on injuries, but I don't really know what kind of comes from that for him per se. So, like, I mean, you lost your four running mates: Steven Adams, Dylan Brooks, Royd Rage, and Jaren Jackson. I don't know.
Desmond Bain.
I don't know what kind of. I don't know what that means for Ja, but I obviously, I feel like it doesn't mean anything.
I mean, that's fair. I think it happening on a Tuesday too means usually. I mean,
those last minute trades.
Yeah, usually it comes like I was expecting trades like this to happen on Thursday, but with these teams moving fast like this, it does have me thinking like there has to be more that they're trying to do. Cavs too, maybe.
Hopefully.
So would it happen in 2 days, 3 days before? It's like, okay, man, maybe there's still some more cooking over these next couple of days, and we'll kind of see how it all finishes out. But definitely interesting.
And then one more somewhat big trade here today. Chris's Celtics traded for Nikola Vucevic. Obviously, trading Anthony Simons, a guy that just joined them this season and played pretty well for the most part. Obviously, what were you guys' thoughts on that trade?
So they've been hinting at trading Anthony Simon all year. My personal opinion, I wish we would have kept him because he was just like he provided the spark off our bench as far as what's going on. Like, the starting five, they'll do okay here and there, but a lot of times when we go into lows, like he immediately comes in spark plug. And just like how you said about Darius Garland, like he's not with Boston, I'd say, and maybe not in Portland because that was a knock on him. But with Boston, he's not a cone. He's just small, but he actually defends pretty well for his size and whatnot. And so honestly, I wouldn't have traded him because we don't have a backup point guard. That's just bottom line. We have no backup point guard. Today we decided to put Pritchard on the bench and start Baylor Shireman as a point guard, I guess, so we can have some spark of offense that we just lost with Anthony Simon. So that's the only thing I find weird. I understand we needed a big, but then that just made me go back to question like, okay, is Jason Tatum coming back or not?
That's the main thing that got me because just last week we got the reports that Jason Tatum is not coming back this season. So it's like you make a move like this where you're already tied for second in the East. I understand the reports came out like last month that Celtics were in the market for a big. They're trying to, search around for a big. I get all that, but that's a big disruption that you have at this point in the season. So, I mean, it could go either way. Vucevic is not a scrub by any means. He could definitely help this team. But like you said, on in the backcourt, it's still a lot of questions. And then when you have that, so you don't expect at this point we can't expect Jason Tatum to come back this season. So now it's like, well, what else are you? But it's another one. Like, what are you going to make another move? Over the next couple of days to kind of shore this up a little bit, or what? So, yeah, It is tough to judge it because we're not on the deadline exactly. So it's tough to give it like either way, good or bad. But this one's interesting too.
It's definitely interesting. And then from the Bulls side of things, they also they just keep acquiring these guards.
Yeah.
It doesn't really seem, I don't really know what the Bulls are doing, what direction that they've got going. I don't know if they're, once again, if they're a part of other trades that are going to occur. But, it seems like the Bulls have kind of been stuck in the same position. Not seems. They have been stuck in the same position for the better half of a decade now. So, when are they going to kind of take the steps to make things turn things around? Maybe they feel this is it with Simons, but they obviously traded a shooter today to the Pistons as well, and Kevin Herter. So I just really don't know what's going on with the Bulls in terms of what they're building over there, but we'll see. But yeah, as you guys kind of mentioned, the Celtics have been kind of looking at and basically remodeled their whole big room, their bigs in over the past few years, from what is obviously back to Robert Williams, and obviously Al Horford was there just forever, but getting KP in there, Cornette in there, so now bringing in Vucevic, clearly they felt that there needed to be some changes there.
Mm-hmm.
He's another offensive force, going to be able to shoot the ball and kind of continue what they do in terms of shooting the lights out there. We'll see how, he kind of factors into their defense and, how it's one thing, like we kind of have been saying about a lot of people, but it's always one thing when you're playing a certain way for a team that's not winning something versus a team that has championship aspirations. So, and then different coaching and stuff like that. And, I think the Celtics have proven that they're a good organization where you can kind of expect some things to change for them. So, or for certain players. So, I don't know, like Cass said, all these trades without the trade deadline, being completely done. It's kind of like, we'll wait and see. We obviously got to wait and see how they fit as well. But, it's definitely a lot of things going on in the NBA. A far cry from what people thought it was going to be, where, I feel like things were kind of created where teams were supposed to grow and farm talent, but it seems like that's not necessarily the case, especially when you trade a 26-year-old for a 36-year-old. But with that being said, we can go ahead and switch over to the football side of things. Super Bowl week, obviously this week, it has already kicked off with both teams landing in San Fran. Got interesting, because we our typical media week, I feel like has not really gotten too many quotables this week, but obviously something that we talked about last week and we talk about every year when we do get to these championship games in any sport, well, professional sport, you oftentimes have guys that have been around for a long time finally getting their first rings. Guys like Sam Darnold that's kind of reinvigorated their career. Who are some guys that you guys are kind of looking forward to as just fans of the game that may possibly get an opportunity to win a Super Bowl?
For me, it will actually be his second Super Bowl. I would say Milton Williams. Coming from the Eagles organization, he's been with us for a while, and like he's one of those players where if you're not watching your team constantly, you don't necessarily as a fan know who that is unless you're watching the team constantly. So he's been one of our best players since he's been on the Eagles. He's just been a quiet person as far as like most people not being notarized. And then for him to be able to turn it up last year in the playoffs and help us make that run and go crazy in the Super Bowl to getting a big contract to now being back in the Super Bowl, that could change the trajectory of his career. Obviously, I'm not gonna say no crazy stuff like Hall of Fame, blah blah blah, but he could go down as a good as Patriots player. He could change his name from being an known Eagle to being a known Patriot. So this is one of them games that I if he get it, I'd be happy for.
Yeah, that's a good pull, for sure. I'm gonna stick with the other side though. I like to position you. I'm gonna go with Leonard Williams. And this is a way to kind of cement him. He's getting up there in age, one of the older kind of impact players in the league, our age exactly, at 31. a guy that's been in the league for a while, but you also get to move it to another echelon, with a performance like that he can possibly have on Sunday. And Leonard Williams has been a dog, especially like these last 3 seasons or so. Just a complete dog, complete game record. And this is kind of the moment that you look for in those impact defensive tackles. We saw it with Aaron Donald, back, however long ago that was now, 4 years ago. But I think he has a big chance to kind of submit his name as one of those guys on the defensive line with only probably just at probably 4 or 5 more seasons left on his career. So I like him having the chance to kind of get his name out there a little bit more.
Well, it's funny enough where we all went with D tackles here, and I'm going to reserve my right to change this one if some of the allegations against this person are true. Once again, they're allegations. But Christian Barmore, being diagnosed with blood clots last season, and being out for the entire season just to get an opportunity to play for the full season, you might fuck it up because of the allegations here. But I'm gonna treat them as allegations here. Like I said, having the blood clots and then playing a 16-game season and then being able to make it to the Super Bowl the very next year, that is something that, prior to last season, he was kind of having that trajectory where we're going to start talking about him as one of the top D tackles. I think last year, if we go back to our top 10s, we might have all had him in our top 10 or at least, 2 out of the 3, so for him to come into this season, kind of have to rebuild his name a bit. Once again, he might tarnish it. Having to rebuild his name again, but going to the Super Bowl, I think it's pretty cool. And then, there's obviously a couple other guys, but that probably tarnished their name. His fellow receiver on his team, but a little bit. But getting a Super Bowl could probably make some things. Some things go away for him. It seems like they've got some interesting things. If they do lose a Super Bowl and then both of them after,
that'll be a bad look.
That's a nasty month of L's.
That's a bad look, boy. If they lose and then both these guys have to get suspended for whatever many games next season, that's a bad look. Especially when they pushed it back, like any kind of updates, any kind of rulings, any kind of courts to after the Super Bowl, and they made that decision 2 months ago. It's very interesting. What it is. Yeah, what it is. But that's a good one too with Christian.
But yeah, we shall see. We shall see what happens with him, and we shall see what happens with the Patriots themselves. We'll get into that here in our picks here shortly. But we obviously got to go ahead and start off with our hot seat watch. So, who you guys had last week? Who you guys got this week, and why?
Yeah, so we didn't really touch on that at all this time around. But last week I had the Eagles. They ended up obviously getting an offensive coordinator and a new passing game coordinator, which ironically both of them were interviewing for the offensive coordinator position. Again, that don't change how I feel about how they handled the situation. They don't change nothing. But I mean, for sure, incoming hot seat next year for them motherfuckers. So that's that. So this week on the hot seat, it has something to do with the Super Bowl, but it's more so I don't know if I want to say talent development or just all around coaching, but I'm putting that on the hot seat in the NFL. You got a guy in Sam Darnold, top pick, came in, didn't do as well as he wanted to do with the Jets, but the knock on him eventually became around the whole league that he's not bust, not good, whatever. And, he turned that around to last year, winning 14 games and getting to the playoffs. Obviously, didn't do good in playoffs. Here comes the narrative again. And this year, he's in the Super Bowl. Has a chance to, solidify who he is, even though, we all can see the talent and whatever. But that goes back to me just saying, everybody needs good coaching. And to just give up on certain players just because you're not coaching them well, that doesn't make them a bad player. That doesn't make them a bust. And that's how, most teams end up losing on that. So as far as the hot seat, I want it to be a better environment to be able to coach these players and not give up on them that quickly. Just because something bad happened that year, that doesn't make them a bust or whatever. But it's a high turnover game. It's a high turnover type of career. I understand that, but Sam Darnold's career could have been differently. Just without saying it's him, it could have been the coaching. As you see, all these coaches are gone, leaving, whatever, and he's still in the league. So,
but I think that plays a huge factor in it as well. Is the way these coaches are being turned. Look, we had 10 coaching openings this year. Like, it's honestly insane how much coaching turnover there is in the league. 21
offensive coordinator.
Yeah, 21 offensive coordinator openings. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you? How are you supposed to? So you have situations, Chris, where you have Sam Darnold that may have failed with one, not necessarily him in particular, but a quarterback like that may have had a bad season, may have a bad season with a coach who gets canned. And of course, we talk about it all the time. When we get a new coach in, new system, new offensive coordinator, whatever it is, they want to pick their guy. So that kind of throws him to the wayside, this quarterback that they had. That plays a big factor in everything too. But like, I think you see this year, like, it's very evident that this coaching turnover has to chill. Like, at a certain point, it's like it's change for the sake of change for a lot of people. Some people, yes, but sometimes it's a little too fast. We got to let this shit play out just a little bit longer, so you'll end up in situations like this. So I think that plays a huge factor in it, honestly, too. That's a good one. I can't remember exactly who I had last week, but I know I talked about Aaron Glenn a lot. And
Aaron Glenn and Dan Quinn.
And I'll leave DQ alone to the season starts. But DQ. But Aaron Glenn, man, you got Darrell Bevell. I think I talked about it last week. We talked about it, like who they are inviting in for these interviews, and it seems like it's coming down to Darrell Bevell or Greg Roman.
Greg,
as your offense coordinators. Again, it's a choice. It's definitely a choice. And coming off of what I just said about giving coaches too many chances, but at the same time, they could have fired Aaron Glenn after one season. It was up. They could have, but they didn't. So this is huge for Aaron Glenn. But this week, though, we didn't talk about it a lot. We didn't talk about it at all, really. But we got two new since our last pod. We got one official head coaching hire with Mike LaFleur in Arizona, and then Clint will wait till after the Super Bowl for that to be official. But we also have Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah being fired by Minnesota. They're in a crossroads right now. So I'm putting that whole franchise on the hot seat because you choose to fire your GM after, and I get it. Like, all the stuff is, you're going to have whoever assistant kind of step up until after the draft, and that's when it really changes for GMs anyway. We know that because all the work is pretty much done or being done right now. So it's not going to mean much to hire somebody new next week or whatever. But as a franchise, you come off of, like you said, Chris, 14 wins with Sam Darnold last season. You choose to let him walk. Cool. I don't know exactly what their offer was to him or whatever. But you have Kevin O'Connell, who you really respect as a coach, obviously. You gave it's reports now. We don't know exactly, but it's reported that you gave Brian Flores $6 million a year to coach that defense. And that's not cheap money for a defensive coordinator. You have to increase the talent on this squad. I know that, like, a lot of people just say, "Oh, it's a built team," and it has been. But there's a lot of questions that you have to answer this upcoming season, whether it's on that defensive line, whether it's in the defensive backfield, whether it's on the offensive receivers. What are you going to do with Jordan Addison? Are you going to keep him around? Is he going to get his head straight? What are you going to do with your running back room? You brought on Aaron Jones. He missed a lot of the season last year. You brought in, what's his name from San Francisco? Jordan Mason. Which, it seems like him and the coach him and the offensive coordinator were on different pages. I'll just say it like that. So it's a lot of questions to answer for the Minnesota team. And I'm interested to see who they bring in at GM, after the draft and how they choose to operate, honestly, until the draft. Because there's a lot of stuff that's going on in Minnesota kind of behind the scenes that I feel like aren't on top of the quarterback question, obviously. So it's a lot to answer for Minnesota, but it's definitely a choice to sit and fire your GM, after giving him an extension not even a year ago. You know how that is. Yeah, Minnesota, just the whole franchise as a whole. Hot seat. I'm just watching everything about this kind of operation over these next 7 months.
And I do want to say one thing, because we have been giving Sam Darnold props, but we also have to stop. The world has to stop capping here, because when Sam Darnold finished his season with Minnesota, everybody thought he was trash. Like let's just keep it a bean here. That like he folded those last couple weeks, and everybody was virtually out on him. When the Seattle Seahawks traded Geno Smith and got Sam Darnold, it wasn't like people liked it, but it wasn't like. There was a lot of people that were like, I don't know if I would have traded Geno Smith and gave the money to Sam Darnold. So there's a lot of like people trying to be like, crush the Minnesota Vikings, which I get it. They are, they did have him in the building, but they did have him in the building when they watched and thought that he was better, or JJ McCarthy was better as well. So to their credit, whether they were right or wrong, Sam Darnold has also been to 5 other teams, basically. So like, there is like I feel like a lot of people, outside of maybe Colin Cowherd, who who loves Sam Darnold, everybody else basically, let's temper that down for just a second here, because it gets a little, there's a lot of revisionist history here, as if a lot of people were saying that the Minnesota Vikings should be going all out to spend money on Sam Darnold.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, with that being said, my hot seat last week, I had both Devontae Adams and Kevin Durant. That night, specifically, I'm pretty sure it was the same night that the Rockets were playing the Mavericks, and they almost got walked down by Cooper Flag. But there's still some, I feel like, late game things where they don't involve KD as much as they kind of, it's really Sengun driven. But, we can kind of get into that a little bit more when we start talking about basketball a little bit more next week. But in Devontae Adams, obviously, he can't do too much on the couch with us. But with that being said, this week's hot seat is a tough one.
Oh, man.
Oh, shit.
We got to put Rashad David on the hot seat this week. So both my teams have decided.
That is so.
We're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You ask for trades, you ask for movement, and you end up your team ends up trading James Harden for Darius Garland. Now that we'll see how that trade works out, but to be fighting for the Cavs for the last few years and they not be reliable last year, just for you to go get the most unreliable or
no,
he
most
is.
unreliable. No. We know who the most unreliable person is. I ain't gonna bring a name up. Well, you know. But second most unreliable person in the playoffs, his former Thunder teammate. We know here.
That's not who KD?
Yeah, all three of them.
All three.
But it could get a little shaky here. For me. Now, one thing that I really wanted to bring up last week that I didn't, the Colts were 100% right. If they would have stayed healthy, I strongly believe that they probably would be in the Super Bowl right now, just given how they were rolling. Now, with that being said, they might try to go sign a quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. That could ruin what next season looks like. Sauce Gardner. Now, you got traded for the 2 first-round picks. Everything after that kind of went left. You got a lot to prove here because I am hanging on by a thread. Chris Ballard. Shane Steichen. I'm hanging on by a thread here. Liatu Latu. I'm hanging on by a thread. So help me.
Help me.
Help me.
That's cool.
So with that being said, with the Cavs, whatever they do in the playoffs, and whatever the Colts decide to do in this offseason, Rashad is on the hot seat today. So that's what I'm rocking with.
Nah, but that's fair. I mean, to have both your teams do you like that in a year span?
They're making some decisions. Let's just say that.
But with that being said, I am being dead ass. If their Colts were rolling, they have every right to feel like we already beat Denver, so we would have whooped them.
That's why Ballard still got a job.
That is why he still got a job. The Buffalo Bills, they could have ran all over them. And then the Patriots, I'm just saying, they ain't look good at all. So I'm just saying, they're probably feeling very frustrated up there in Indianapolis right now. But don't, please do your due diligence before you sign a quarterback.
Please.
For sure.
So with that being said, we can go ahead and get into right before these predictions. How do you guys feel about the two hires for head coach? Obviously, with Clint Kubiak, I mean, we know what it is. He's going to the Raiders, and then Mike LaFleur going to the Arizona Cardinals.
I mean, they both obviously go into a situation where there is some work that needs to be done. And I'm assuming that they're given all the leeway they need. As far as Arizona, I say that it might be closer to being an okay, decent team. I just think the Raiders are far beyond that. But you got the number 1 overall pick. We don't know you. I guess you go ahead and get the quarterback. And if Kubiak is who we think he is, as far as being able to get Seattle right this year on offense, I think it'll look pretty decent for them. So I mean, good hires. Arizona again, weird place. It is what it is in there. So.
No, that's why I had Tom Brady. Yeah, and then of course with Clint Kubiak, we knew last week that he was probably going to be the choice. So we'll see. A lot to do with the organization. A lot has been made these last couple of days, or this week, I should say, about the lack of black coordinators, the lack of black head coaches. That's been a big talking point on Twitter. Yeah. But that honestly leads to like deeper kind of conversations that need to be had that I don't think people are ready to have. It's just interesting that they wait till now to bring it up. And I think that's because you have, like, for Arizona, you had Anthony. I think Anthony Weaver was one of the people that they interviewed. Raheem was definitely in there. And it's just like, okay, you choose to go with a non-play calling offense coordinator, which, okay, we know Sean McVay has a great track record. The people that work as his OC, cool. So far. Yeah. Kevin O'Connell, Liam Cohen, whatever.
Liam Cohen.
He was the OC.
In Tampa.
He was the OC in
years ago, and he left. And then he came back.
Did he go to college, or did he come back? He went to college and then came back.
Yeah, Will Levis.
So yeah, I mean, we'll see kind of how it goes with Mike LaFleur. It is an interesting kind of pool that they made there. I'll be honest with you, I watched maybe 10, not even lie, maybe like 3 minutes of his press conference today. And I was like, okay, we'll kind of see how it is, but it's nothing too inspiring. I'll say that. But again, both these franchises have a lot of work to do, just across the board, with talent wise. So for both these franchises who kept their GMs, and of course we know like Spatek just got fired last year or whatever, but they did hire a GM before that. That was only there for a year. But anyway, with the Raiders, but it's mainly on these GMs more than the coaches, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. And we'll kind of see how how they end up building the roster out and making the decisions at quarterback, especially for the Cardinals moving forward. But this more on the GM than the coaches for these two programs.
And obviously, we kind of talked about it a little bit. I feel like the Cardinals kind of jumped the gun a bit in terms of firing Jonathan Gannon. Um, but the way that the season ended, I also understand. And then it was seemingly like Kyler might have been moving on, and we don't know if that was a Gannon thing, if that was a GM thing. But and now seemingly like he might be back, and maybe that's why they moved off. Excuse me, if it was Gannon, maybe he was like, I need to find my own guy, and they're kind of like, we don't necessarily have the great path to finding this person, so bringing back Kyler. Who knows what really went on there, but it does seem like the ownership jumped the gun. And then, like you said, the hiring is kind of uninspiring because it felt like they weren't really in talks with any of the top guys. And I guess LaFleur, coming from the Rams tree, obviously has a brother as a head coach in the league as well. Probably helped out there. So I don't know. In terms of the Clint Kubiak going to the Raiders, I really like. I mean, I love Fernando Mendoza. I think he's going to be really good in the league. I don't know if he's ever, we don't know if he's going to be top 10, top whatever the case may be. But I do think that he's going to be a good player in the league. And then you get a play caller that looks like he's excellent. Coming from Seattle, coming off of this deep playoff run and making Sam Darnold, like I said, last year everybody was saying they were out on him, and now he's everybody's favorite this year. Which I mean, he played well enough to to have that conversation switch. But again, we'll see with Genty. We'll see. Obviously Brock Bowers is really good. They have a second tight end, Michael Mayer, who's solid as well. We'll see with the young receivers that they got in this past draft with Besh and Thornton what they do. But I do think they have a path for kind of continuing to have a really good offense, especially maybe they get another backup running back, kind of like they have the two-headed monster in Seattle. Then maybe Shaheed ends up with the Raiders, or they picked up some older guys with Lockett coming over there, so we'll kind of see with him. But I do, they've got to figure it out on defense. We still need to figure out what the hell happened with Christian Wilkins because it just kind of went real quiet there.
Real quiet.
But they still have to figure out some pieces on defense, and we'll see. If Max Crosby, unlike last year, we haven't had the quotables coming out from Myles Garrett and Max Crosby and stuff like that. Some of the players when they were going down the media row last year, we haven't had that yet. So we'll kind of see if anything comes out of it during the rest of the week of the Super Bowl. But so far so good. We don't know if he's going to be a good head coach or not, but at least from the offensive side, it does look like he can be really good. So we're talking about Fernando Mendoza like he's a foregone conclusion at number one. I think he's a foregone conclusion at number one. So I'm going to keep talking about it like he's going to be there unless they trade it. It'd be idiots, but we'll see. We'll see. And then the question shit, I don't know. That shit's whatever. I don't really know what they had going on.
Nobody knows.
And it's kind of unfair to him that they kind of did the whole, they try to put out that they were upset about him, or they said other teams were upset about him taking, some leave.
Yeah, I'm like, other teams talking like, who gives a fuck what they talking about?
Why would other teams know that unless people in Minnesota are talking about it? Like, Diana Rossini tried to come back and be like,
she did try to want that back.
So I don't really know what's really going on there, but it seems very nasty, especially given the fact of the conversation, as Cass mentioned, where we're talking about a lot of, the lack of people of color, Black people being hired in these, leadership positions and having to incentivize them and having to have rules behind it. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with ownership and how the ownership probably looks at Black people and, being able to relate to them and all that, whatever the case may be. But, it just looks pretty nasty. So, the Questy stuff, it is what it is, I guess. It is what it is. But with that being said, obviously we got one last pick to make this year, the biggest one of them all. So who you guys got in the Super Bowl this week and why?
Yeah, man. I'm just keep it simple, man. I'm going with Seattle. I just think they're on a heater right now offensively. I don't think the Patriots are. I think it's gonna be a good game though. Both defenses gonna try to show up, but I just think at this point, Seattle they humming. They ready to get this dub. And I also predict a Nick Emenwari pick 6.
Who's your Super Bowl MVP?
Sam Darnold.
Ooh. I'm also going with the Seattle Seahawks in this game. Like Shad mentioned a little bit earlier, like the Patriots haven't looked the best. You know, the defense has shown up, but they've also played some shaky quarterbacks, to say the least. So I think Seattle, like you said, Chris, is rolling. I think they're going to cook up a fantastic game plan. I think it's going to come down to a big special teams play, whether that's in the kicking game, kick return, punt return, whatever it is. I think it's going to be something huge that happens Seattle's way. Seattle has made plays on special teams throughout the entire season. And I know that especially because I had their defense special teams in fantasy. And they were balling all season in multiple ways. Fumbles, fumble recoveries, block kicks, anything you can say, anything you can name, they had it this season. And I think that shows up huge in this game. For my MVP, I want to go with Sam Darnold. I think it's going to be the story of it, and I think it's a lot of it will be about the optics of it. If he plays well, he's 100% getting the MVP. But I'm not going to go with Sam Darnold, though. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker, K9. And I think the run game is going to be super important. And I know Patriots have been very good against the run, but I think Seattle can get up in a position to let K9 kind of just do his thing, and just keep handing the ball off, control the clock, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker in this one. I think he scores 2-3 touchdowns, and that kind of, gets that kind of talk rolling.
Okay. So I'm also going with Seattle in this one. I just think they're the better team. They've been the best team in the league, in my opinion, all season. There was a kind of a talking point, some discourse around the NFC being tougher than the AFC all season, and kind of how the AFC is kind of cratered, obviously with the Bo Nix injury. As I mentioned, the Colts were rolling at the beginning of the season. The injuries there, the stupid shit that happened with the Pittsburgh Steelers and DK Metcalf that seems to be going on still with this, weirdo fan. Them cratering down the end, Patrick Mahomes cratering, getting hurt, Lamar getting hurt, Josh and the Bills folding, and it's kind of looked like the AFC has been a little bit of fool's gold. So I am also going with them, and I'm going to pick. I'm gonna roll with Chris, and I'm gonna pick Nick Emenwari to be the first rookie to get Super Bowl MVP. And like he said, I think he makes a ton of plays, and then he gets pick 6, fumble 6, some type of 6 as well, landing in the perfect spot for him in the draft. And I think that he ends his great rookie season in the right way.
Interesting. It'll take that pick 6.
That's what happened in the first Seattle Super Bowl. A defensive player won the MVP from a pick 6. So we shall see if that happens this time. But that gives us a wrap for another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast. We'll catch y'all with some basketball and the Super Bowl winner next week. And we will see you then.
Yes, sir.